Composing Gloves here, and NAMM just happened, and I had the great opportunity to run the FL Studio booth. It was a blast. Nothing but positive opinions coming by. I kind of expected some like Pro Tools hecklers to come by and tell me, FL Studio is not professional, but none of that actually. FL has quite the reputation. I was very positive. In the past, I've done booths for Reveal Sound. They make Spire, and which is a synth if you're unaware, and Acusonus, which actually recently sold to Facebook, so they're not a thing anymore. But every year I do a booth when NAMM does happen because of COVID and all that. And this year I got to choose, and I jumped on FL as fast as I possibly could. It's my DAW. It's the one if I can do it in FL, I will. And I thought it was really well suited to it. I actually teach at a college, Citrus College, and I teach music theory and acoustics, and I'm going to be taking on some of the engineering aspects of some courses as well, which is going to be really cool. And I like to show off the sound design possibilities, sort of the mixing workflows that are possible. And so the interactions at the booth were just really fun because you get people from all levels. You get the hip hop producers who, they have their workflow, they have the things they like to do. And then you have the people from other DAWs who want to know, what's different about FL. And they were especially fun to show things to because you could show them workflows that they've never seen before, at least not in like something that would be complicated to do in another DAW. And yeah, we got people from all over the place. Bitwig users, Ableton users, a lot of Logic users stopped by. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then of course, the FL users were coming by. So I just want to share with you some of these experiences. For some context too, I'm showing all this at NAMM. It's a kind of a smaller booth. It's just a software booth. You don't need like a ton of things. I was next to a live band, so there was a lot of yelling during certain parts of the day. And in the future, I hope we can just not be next to a band. I don't think we knew that they were going to have a band because it was DaVinci Resolve, which is a video software. And I definitely, yeah, that was a surprise that the first day I wasn't sure my voice was going to make it 3 days. But yeah, so through all the yelling, got exhausting throughout the day. I ran across some similar conversations. Of course, the first one is the FL Studio users who are just want to know what's new and what's coming. So I'd open up a project. I had a few projects I'd rotate through. And they were kind of fun because some of them look quite interesting just out the gate. So this is a project I made that features just the native FL Studio plugins. I did use third-party samples, but I kept all the processing. All the plugins are native. And I even included some special things like the Harmony synthesis is one that a lot of people don't know about, and it's just so much fun to show. We had a MIDI controller right there, and you can have it sing vocals however you want. It will be okay. And Plugin Boutique came by, and they wanted to do a product that, of course, was on their site. So I wound up showing this technique for that video. It was like a split-second video too. Like he came up. He went through what was on there and he's like, can you do a video for this? And I'm like, sure, let's do it. And then, right away, we jumped right in. Pretty crazy. So, yeah, there was a lot of that. People would come by and they'd want an interview. And it was always kind of nerve-wracking because I wanted to make sure, I did a good job and I tried to be relaxed and those sorts of things. I definitely think doing videos has helped me. So there's just a ton going on. This was one of the sessions, though. They'd want to know what's new. I'd show them frequency splitter, frequency shifter. Those are some of the newer things. A lot of cats. We'd get these hip hop guys who come by, right? A lot of hip hop people, and they like syncing drums. And I figured out halfway through the first day that very, very few of them knew about New Time. And it is always so much fun to see the look on people's faces when they see how easy drum syncing is now. So I'd come in here and be like, look at the project tempo. We're at 98 beats per minute. And then I'd come find a drum loop, which I have like a bunch here, but I typically grab from this boom bap one because it's got drums that, they kind of vibe these drums pretty easily. They're not like EDM drums. They're boom bap drums. And I'd be, look, this is 90, so it won't sync just right. There's going to be some hanging off here. And in the past, you would have to come and right-click on the time control. And I'd only ever bring this up if they brought it up first, because I'd let them sort of, tell me their thoughts. A lot of presenting is listening, actually, in these cases, because they're conversations. So Then I'd show them, if you right click down here, you can go to the time warper. And in here, I didn't have this issue there, but sometimes you have to move the window a little bit. So in here, if you just hit this sync control, there it is. And then you can like drag out. And it's the moment I hit that sync and drag it out, they'd explode with joy. It was always so much fun to watch. They'd just be like, whoa, 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 what? And one guy didn't know that you could right click on the time knob and do the auto detect here. He didn't know that this menu existed. So I blew his mind like 2 times in a row. And even though it's like a really simple thing that I think a lot of like, users who use it a lot know about, it was always so much fun because they didn't know about it and they'd just freak out, and it was a good time. A few people wanted to see the workflow. Yeah, that was another common thing. I'd get guys who have never ever used FL ever, and they're like, teach me how to use it right now. And it's like, well, that's kind of a tall order. There's a lot here. So what I typically would do, because it's very easy to get overwhelming with this sort of stuff, and I had to gauge what level they were at. And so there were quite a few people who have literally never written music before, and they were like, I want to do this. Show me how you do it. And they'd ask me to write some chords. So I'd really quick go to a new project. And I usually stayed in my template. Sometimes I'd leave my template to the default one, but I'd usually just stay in it because it's just faster. It didn't really make a difference. I'd show them how to load a plugin because that's usually the first hurdle. And I'd always show the plugin picker because it's just the best way to load plugins. So I'd show them, hey, if you right click on it, you can come in here and type what you want. And on my laptop, I have a lot less stuff. So there wasn't as many like things that popped up. And then I'd show them that you could load up Flex. I'd always lead with Flex because, it's the nexus of FL Studio, essentially. And then I'd typically go to strings and go for like the all string staccato patch. It's pretty easy to vibe off of. And then I'd just write in a chord progression real fast, use, show them how quick you can write chords in. I'd had a MIDI controller there, so sometimes we'd play them in if they liked playing things in, and show them how easy it is to record MIDI in. And then show them, we'd put a pattern down, and then we'd add another one, and then I'd show them, look at the ghost notes. You can use the ghost notes to move around, and we'd get a 4-track thing going super fast. It usually took me 5 minutes to get going if they didn't want me to stop. I'd always ask them, I'm going too fast, do you have any questions? And if they let me go, I would just go. And quite a few of them were like, whoa, I see the workflow now. That was the whole goal. And if I did automate, I'd automate something really light just to show them how automation works. But I tried to avoid it because it's just another level of things to think about. But yeah, so we got quite a few of those guys. They were fun to show because I think they sort of saw like how quickly it works and how well the pattern workflow works with something like that. Which is like we got a lot of cats who, are Logic users, a ton of Logic users actually, a surprisingly large amount. Got a lot of questions, is FL Studio Mac up to speed? A lot of people, I guess, were just unsure that it was going to be as good as the Windows version. I was like, yeah, it's great. You should try it. The demo is free. Just download it and try it out. They have a team for it. It was made with love. A lot of care is taken to make sure that it works fast and efficiently. Like, give it a go. And so a lot of people from other DAWs would ask, what are the key differences? For this sort of stuff, I typically grabbed a different project. I have a project here I wanted a project that typically showed some of the core differences between FL Studio and other DAWs that also featured Patcher. So for those guys, I'd show them first how easy it is to load plugins, because in other DAWs, like Pro Tools especially, is very bad. You have to go through this big old list of stuff in order to get to where you want. So like, you'd have to click and load, and you had no other option. You had to go through like their big list. And a number of DAWs are like this. And I know this. So I would always show the plugin picker and be like, look, I know it looks scary, especially this one, because this is my home machine. But if I just type in parametric, I don't even have to finish typing. I just type para and hit enter. I've got an EQ on the screen. If I want a multiband compressor, I've got a multiband compressor on the screen. It takes a split second, can work with any plugin, so you can take your existing collection. And that was always fun to be like, whoa, that's a fast way of loading stuff. Like, they had no idea that browsing could actually be way, way better. And so that's something I was like, FL Studio is best for this. So that was always fun to show. Showing the piano roll, it varied. I'd usually ask if they worked with MIDI very much, because some people didn't, so it wasn't the best thing to talk about. But some people did, and I'd show how FL remembers the note length. Like if I want to place a short one, I could place a short one. If I want a longer one, they'll stay long, and I can click the short one to go back to short ones. And that stuff adds up over a session. So I'd usually show that and explain that. And I'd usually also ask if they were a contact user. Because for contact users in particular, FL Studio has the additional colors that you can use to route out your instrument, and you can change without using key switches. And there were a few people that were heavy contact users, and I happen to be one myself. And when they saw what you could do and completely avoid key switches and load multiple things at the same time, like you could have sustains and staccatos with only one patch. So you don't have to load a second patch. So you're saving resources, and the workflow is better. And you can do the ghost channels and jump between channels. It's like, oh my gosh, like why am I not using this for scoring with contact? Like it's amazing for that. So, and I actually would usually bring up, there's actually quite the community because of this reason. It's just so much more elegant and quick to work with it, especially if you're someone who types in most of your MIDI with a mouse, or clicks it in, whatever you want to say. So those are the things I'd show. And then I'd always top off with an instance of Patcher. And this is where, when people asked, oh, what's new? I'd show off the Fruity Delay 3. And then I'd show off the band splitter. And this was a fun project because it looks pretty crazy. And this brought a lot of people to the booth that I'm not sure they would have come to the booth otherwise. They'd look and they'd say, what the heck is all this automation for? And I had a couple different projects. So some looked more intimidating and others were less intimidating. It just kind of depended on what time of day it was for me. So, but I'd show them this and they'd be like, what is this control? What is this? And I'd show Patcher. And this is where the people who do a lot of mixing got excited, because Patcher is incredible for mixing. You can do things. If you run out of room, you can just open up a Patcher and away you go. No more routing to additional channels. And the creativity you can do with this, and the fact that you can save things like this and open them in other sessions so easily. It was fun to see the look on some people's faces when they realized how easy this was. There are other programs out there that do things similar to this, but there's so much more of a modular nature that they kind of lose the essence of it. They're more of a burden to work in just because they're so much more granular, like Reactor. But this can load in like any of your VSTs. Like there's a lot of advantages to this. So if they had questions like that, we talk about them, but then we'd show them this. I'd like to show them the frequency splitter, especially for the newer users. So this is a pretty crazy sound, so they'd always want to hear it. So I'd play like this bit right here. And I'd show them, I'm automating the midband and show them how this splitting happens and the idea behind the chain and how it came about. And I'd usually have up a parametric EQ to show them, this is what a lot of this is controlling. Some of this is like FM stuff in Patcher. And I try to keep this real surface level and just give them a notion of how the project works. And it's not as scary as it looks. And doing stuff like this is so easy in FL Studio. And there were a few times I showed people that you could now merge automation. You couldn't do that a few updates ago. So this was added a little while. It's been around for a little while now, not that long. And so some people who do a lot of what I do, like this kind of stuff, were like, what? You can do. I was as excited as they were about it. There were a couple. It was interesting, the number of people who wanted sponsorships / to be a power user. And these guys would always lead in a way that kind of gave them away. They were the name droppers. They were the name droppers or the time droppers. So if you said, I've been using FL since version 1, man, or version 2 or version 7, there, got a lot of these guys. And if you drop the amount of time you've been using it, there's a 50-50 chance you're just a fun person that was looking to, talk about your favorite DAW with a guy who loves the DAW probably as much as you do. At least I hope I do. Hopefully even more. But a lot of the time, if you dropped a name, you were going this direction. It was pretty certain for that. And the two names dropped the most by far. In fact, they might have been the only two names I heard were Kanye West and Dr. Dre. And I had people that would even drop the names and never even say their own name. I was like, they forgot their name because they wanted to make you know. And it's like, wow, that's so cool. And then, of course, they'd expect me to be able to hook them up with some sort of like thing. And it's like, I've heard these two names so many times in a row. So, I just encourage them. Like, keep making music, keep reaching out. And I'd always try and tell them, be more active on the Loop Talk forums. When you make content, especially educational stuff about FL, or if you're doing a show or something, be active on the Loop Talk forums. It is the best way. If you really want to do that, those are the directions you should be going. There's not like a magic bullet that I have. It's really up to you, largely. And so, yeah, I would usually push them that way because I have no ability I don't have any influence over stuff like that. So that was my usual go-to. Hopefully it was the right call. That was what I was going for. And then, of course, the people who wanted the new stuff. So by far, the most common question was, can I get a sponsorship? Second most common question was, what's new and what's coming? So a lot of people wanted to see FL21, but I don't have that. And so I usually tried to substitute by having this open. So I had a page open to Loop Talk. First, this just let me show Loop Talk. So I could see like, this is the place where if you really want to get more interactive with the developers in the community, this is where it's going to happen. Like this, check this out. But I'm a lurker mostly. And yeah, I'd show them. I'm like, audio fades are coming. And I just thought it was so much because the number of people who were just super excited about audio fades, it was awesome. And then, of course, themes. This knocked some people. This got mixed reactions. Some people were super stoked, and then others just were like, cool. So, I had to sort of gauge how much I wanted to focus on that. And then I'd show some of the GIFs and say, like, there's this mystery thing. We're not quite sure what it is. It's going to drop. And then they'd always ask, guaranteed, because, of course, you think I would know, when is FL21 dropping? And I'd say, I don't know. You could guess. And I usually throw out, if I had to guess, I'd give it a month to 2 months. That's just a guess. I could be right. I could be wrong. I just don't know. And usually that was enough to satiate people. And just tell them like, yeah, it could be here in 2 months. It could be here in 6 months. I personally think it's sooner rather than later, but I have no idea. It's just a guess in the dark. So that was my typical reaction to those. So those were most of the common reactions. There were a few funny ones, like there were the folks that didn't know anything, and then they wanted me to teach them like everything audio right then and there. And that was hard, especially since there was a pretty constant stream of people coming to me, and there was a live band I was trying to yell over. So it got exhausting just hour after hour doing this. And I wanted to be as excited so that the next person had a good experience too, because, this is my chance to really like sell FL and show like these are the great things about it. So that was always kind of funny because I didn't know how far I should go or how far I shouldn't go. And yeah, that was interesting. Some of them played an instrument, some of them didn't. So I really had to, sometimes I'd show the chord stamp tool and be like, check this out. Or I'd show the scale highlighting in the piano roll. But those were good ones. And then the other ones were the number of people who thought they had an audio interface issue and they thought that somehow I was going to fix it. And so I have a number of audio interfaces and I was running a Focusrite 6i6. So they see the Focusrite. And a lot of them had a Focusrite, so they'd ask me like questions about it. And, I'd show them the menu and I'd explain how the buffer works and how to increase the buffer to reduce issues. But in some cases, they'd give me like an impossible to solve problem with the amount of information they gave me. Like every time I plug it in, FL Studio crashes. And that's like all they tell me. And I'd be like, dude, that is really vague. Yeah, I would try reinstalling the drivers. Like I'd have to troubleshoot. I'd have to be there to really fix something like that. And I'd always follow up with like, FL's worked great with every interface I've ever used. So it's very likely an issue with your setup. You might have a weird driver or something like that. But I'd sometimes turn into a sound card recommending guy trying to help them troubleshoot the issue. And I always gave them like some steps to try out. It's just kind of frustrating that I couldn't just be at their machine and just fix it, because usually it's just, you get a couple of things wrong and it doesn't work. And if you're really new, it can be a bit intimidating to touch some of the settings or even know where the settings are. So I'd try and give people hints and demonstrate. That was NAMM. Besides the FL booth, yeah, so that was a blast. I loved every second of it. The schools were also common. Had a number of schools come by that wanted NFRs or things of that nature, along with a number of developers who wanted to do something with their plugin. So I'd always recommend to go on to Loop Talk. I didn't have like an email to give them, so I just be like, go on Loop Talk. If you want to do that, you can reach the developers there. They're very open, and I'm sure you'll get taken care of like right away. So I kind of like relied on Loop Talk quite a bit. What was I gonna say? I forgot. There were a couple of things I wish I had at the booth. I wish I had some merch, like some stickers or some shirts or something. A lot of people stopped by just to see if there was a merch. I didn't have any, so that was kind of like, The other thing I really wish I had, I just didn't have, was the more recent controller. Quite a few people stopped by to see the FL Keys controller. I just don't have one of those. So that was another thing I was like, dang, wish I had one of those to show people. So if anyone from Image Line sees this, I have a number of controllers in front of me, so it's kind of like, once you have so many controllers, it's hard to convince yourself to get another one. But it looks really cool. So that was another thing that I was like, would have been nice to have. Wasn't totally necessary, and it didn't come up that often. But for the folks who were a little more savvy to the more recent news, they were excited. And I'd bring it up occasionally and be like, yeah, there's controllers for it now, especially if they brought up stuff like Machine. I'd mention that because those folks tend to be more interested in how the hardware integrates, and they like those sort of systems. But yeah, so NAMM in general, sorry, I forgot what I was going to say earlier. I'm sure it was going to be great, whatever it was. Met a lot of folks that I normally, don't get to see. Got to catch up with the Kilohertz guys. That's so much fun. I love talking to them. They had a booth in the main hall. And so once a day, like each day in NAMM, I tried to stop by and say hi and just, talk audio, have some fun stuff to say. And I got to meet, now this is like more personal, but I knew Venus Theory was going to be there. I didn't know that Adam Neely or Ben Jordan were going to be there, but I've never really talked to them, but I've talked to Venus Theory quite a bit. I even knew him when he was actually smaller than me. Now he's like way, way, way bigger than me. So it's just like really, really cool to see. And so I knew he was going to be there. He lives across the country, so I normally can't see him. And so it was just cool to finally meet him. And he said he got this a lot, but he was way bigger than I imagined. Not like he wasn't fat. He was just tall. He's way taller than, and I think it's because he said he shoots with a wide angle lens and he's usually sitting. So I think that probably contributes to it. Because I was like, whoa, you are way taller than I thought you were. So, but yeah, it was really cool to meet you and hang out for a little bit. I wish I could have hung out more, but yeah. Went to so at NAMM they have this dinner called the VIP Tech Awards dinner, and that was a blast. So it's like this big award where they have all these categories, and then products can win different categories. And I was with a group called Music Marketing, and in that group, FabFilter's part of that group. I actually make a lot of videos for music marketing, which is why there hasn't been so much over on this channel. And Timeless 3 won, and that was very exciting for the company. Like we were stoked. We were like ecstatic. So you got to go up on stage and get the award. They weren't there to receive it themselves, so we got to do that. But congratulations to them. That is like awesome. The software is incredible. I love it. It's my go-to delay now when I'm not using built-in stock stuff. So yeah, there were a couple of projects I showed. This was one of them. So this track's called Blue Eyes. If you're interested in finding it. The other ones, they varied, but I have this Quai track that I had recently made, and I specifically made this for NAMM because I wanted a project that had only FL stuff in it. And one of the developers behind Flex actually stopped by, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name. I'm trying to visualize your name tag. I don't even want to guess at your name because I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. But it was really freaking cool to meet you. I was like, oh my gosh, a developer is here. So that was awesome. That was probably the event of that day for me. I was like so stoked to meet you. And yeah, I got to ask a bunch of questions about Flex and some of like, what's going on there. So this was one I showed off a lot. It's not out on my channel yet. It's a little Quai beat. A lot of Flex is in here, like a ton of Flex, like so much Flex. It's crazy. And then there's quite a few citrus and Harmer patches. Some of these make really good for just playing on the MIDI controller, because I did have a MIDI controller, it just wasn't the FL Keys one. And so a lot of folks would come up and just start dabbling, and I would try to get them on a patch that made sense to dabble on, because some of the projects didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'd be like, oh, here you go, here you go. And then, they'd jam out, and I'd get like a drum groove going so that they could jam to a drum groove and show them a couple of things why they played with the synthesizer. But yeah, so this was one I showed a lot of. It had the Harmony synthesis, and it's just like an upbeat little track. If we go over to like the drop here. And you get Wave Candy out. I have that on the screen because, that's like, it's eye candy. And every now and then you get the little dancing FL Chan out there to do that, just good stuff like that. So that was NAMM in general. When you go, by the way, it's a great place to find people to get a job. But if it's your first time, you've got to be the one who instigates the conversations. And my biggest recommendation is have a business card that has all the stuff on one side. Don't put your phone number on there. And if you're serious about the contact, then you can flip it over and exchange phone numbers. So get a card that's easy to write on. And you got to have stuff to throw out there. So if start a YouTube channel now, or start making videos of some kind, publish your stuff there. It's one of the most shareable ways to get your portfolio out there. And it's probably going to lend the most credibility to you because they can just go check out your work like right there. My YouTube channel has gotten me like so many of my jobs. And the first NAMM, that was actually the thing that got me the job, one of my dream jobs. So that was like, I cannot recommend it enough. Like, have somewhere where you could share your stuff. And then don't be afraid to just start conversations and talk shop. So, be up to date with the most recent stuff. If you're not an expert in the field, you don't necessarily need to announce that. You can still talk shop and learn. You can learn from other people while you're there. And a lot of people value just being heard over talking. And that can oftentimes do more for you in the long run anyway. It really just depends on the person you're talking to. So, and especially if you find out you have similar interests, or there's a similar channel that you like. And a lot of these booths have like random presenters, so they're not tied to the company in any way. And others have like the CEO there. You never know what you're going to get. So one of the first things you want to do is, find out who's at that booth, and, just have a good audio conversation. You have a good time, talk about the product. If you think there's something you can offer them, you should offer it. Toss out as many opportunities as you can. Honestly, NAMM can go so far in terms of networking alone. And I see a lot of the presenters at all these different booths, and they just, some of them are doing what I'm doing and passing out cards and just having a good time with people. And others just are kind of there to present. I feel like they're missing out on the whole point of NAMM. But it gets really fun after the first one, especially as you start to make contacts. Because when you meet up later, you meet friends. It's more of a reunion than it was NAMM. Like, this NAMM was 100 times more fun than the first one for me, because I didn't really know anyone. And this one, it was awesome. All 3 days, just a nonstop flow of friends. And working the FL booth was really great too, because there was a super high level of people that were seeking out the booth. So there was always someone to talk to, or something to say, or something to check out. And I did have someone who was able to take over occasionally so that I could go get lunch and stuff. And I actually knew FL to a large extent, like very, very well. So that was great. That's Kevin. Thanks, Kevin, for that, if you watch this video. But yeah, so if you have any questions about the experience, or if you've never been and you're just curious if it's worth going or something like that, I think it's worth going. But if it's a big like travel, it might not be. It just depends. It varies from person to person. If you have a network of people and NAMM is the place where they're all going to meet, I think it's worth going, because it's just a blast to be with everyone and see people that are from across the world. The chances are you're not going to see them again until the next NAMM. So that's my 2 cents on that. But yeah, feel free to drop down your comments down below. If you did stop by the booth, feel free to comment. Tell me what your thoughts were, what you enjoyed, and what you'd like to see next time. Subscribe and hit that bell icon, and have a blessed day.